Okay, so this is book 7 of the Odyssey, and it's your key points and details of what we're going to get in book 7, which is, of course, the Palace of Alcinous or Alcinous. So, for your overview, key events to start with. Obviously, right at the start, Athene is once again helping Odysseus. Line 14 to line 81, she puts him in a big mist to make sure that he's protected as he comes into the palace. And in addition, she turns up as a little serving girl to direct him along the way. And so here's Athene helping Odysseus. Once Odysseus gets to the palace, then Arete and Alcinous are vital to his survival, aren't they? Alcinous promises to get him home. You can see line 190. He actually says, "We will then take up the matter of his passage so as to ensure him, without trouble or anxiety, the happiness of a speedy return. We will safeguard him." And this is really important because we discover when we get into book 8, and you'll see in line 566, that actually the Phaeacians have a special power. And Alcinous says, "Poseidon grudged us our privilege of giving safe conduct to all comers without ourselves coming to any harm." So actually, this is the way that Homer resolves the plot problem that Poseidon doesn't want Odysseus to get home and keeps shipwrecking him. Of course, the Phaeacians are the ones who are going to be able to get him home. And then Odysseus shows his skill with words, because when Arete questions him and says to him, "Who are you? Where do you come from? Who gave you those clothes? Didn't you say you came here from wandering over the seas?" What he does cunningly is not answer the questions directly, and he distracts things away by complimenting Nausicaa and saying that that it's Nausicaa who must bring such pride and all that sort of stuff to their family, and so he wins their trust. Ultimately saying, "Young people are thoughtless as a rule, but she looked after me." So there's a thought, friends. Try not to be thoughtless. You might get a compliment from somebody who's passing. The next section is Xenia. That's a photograph, actually, of the hospitality competition in California that was held. They called it the Xenia competition. The Greeks are always with us, aren't they? So the Phaeacians demonstrate exemplary Xenia. And you're going to see this all through book 8, the games and feasting, book 11, during Odysseus' speech, and book 13 when they get him back to Ithaca. Now, you might think initially they've made a bit of a boo-boo when it comes to their hospitality, because when Odysseus is suddenly revealed in the middle of the palace, they don't immediately look after him. But come on, friends, he's popped out of a magic mist. Unsurprisingly, there's a little bit of confusion, isn't there? And they all sort of sit there looking a bit awkward. And Echeneus, who's one of the elders, goes, "Alcinous, look at this guy. Shouldn't we be doing something for him?" And Alcinous and Arete suddenly it's like they wake up and go, "Oh yeah, of course." And so we see that actually the Phaeacians are very, very good on their hospitality, because the favourite son is then kicked out, and Odysseus can sit down next to Alcinous. They feed him. They promise to send him home. They send the Phaeacian nobleman home so that Odysseus doesn't feel awkward, all without knowing who this guy is. Remember, they don't know who Odysseus is at this stage. So we know they are good because of their good Xenia. So there's our key events and our Xenia. In terms of the narrative techniques, there's a couple of really interesting things. The first one is how he brings a couple of passages to alive. So you might like to have a look at lines 84 to 94, which cover the arrival at the palace. When you look there, isn't it interesting how Homer brings it alive by using repetition? Now, this is clearly a wealthy, very rich place, bronze, gold, and silver. But if I just read you a little bit, the interior of the well-built mansion was guarded by golden doors hung on posts of silver, which were set in the bronze threshold. The lintel they supported was of silver too, and the door handle of gold. On either side stood gold and silver dogs, which Hephaestus had made with consummate skill. Do you see how Homer brings to life the vivid wealth that they've got there by a simple method of repetition? So there's a first style that Homer uses. The other one you can see in line 95 to 103. We're still describing the palace. But instead of repetition, what he does is he uses multiple examples. So what happens here, line 95, inside the hall, tall chairs were arranged along the side of either side, right round the threshold. Each was draped with a delicately woven cover that the women had worked. The Phaeacians used to sit and enjoy the food and wine that was a lavish supply, golden statues of youths fixed on solid pedestals, flaming torches, banqueteers. So you get a whole load of different examples, all exemplifying wealth and prosperity. So there's two different types of ways to bring a passage alive: repetition or multiple examples. And then finally, in terms of character developments, Arete, she's the queen of the Phaeacians. She's sharp-minded and she asks key questions, and that's how we know she's sharp-minded. She actually says, "Who gave you those clothes?" Because, of course, he's wearing clothes that she herself has made. They're the clothes that she made for her family. But in addition, there's an interesting thing. In Greek tradition, a man who comes back from when he'd thought to be dead is called a deuteropotmos. A man with a second fate. And he goes through a symbolic rebirth. And so actually, when Odysseus comes into the palace, he goes to Arete first, doesn't he? And he comes up to her, and it's almost as if that is the symbolic rebirth, because she's the mother figure. And it's not Alcinous he goes to first, it's Arete. And that links to the point we talked about when we talked about rebirth in Book 6. And then finally, there's Odysseus. Polytropos is the first thing right at the start that Odysseus is talked about. Much travel, much wandering, but it's got a second meaning, a subtle second meaning. Metaphorically means turning both ways. Homer likes to have these plays on words. So although it literally means much travelled, it also means going in lots of different directions in the wily or crafty sense. And so that's what Homer really meant. I really like this translation from Robert Fagles, where Fagles calls Odysseus the man of twists and turns, the polytropos. Twists and turns because he travels a lot, and twists and turns because he's always up to all kinds of funny little tricks and crafty things. So there's your Book 7 summary.